Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joyce Zakubin, and I'm the Manager of Communications and Development for the Clinton Foundation. Welcome to the Clinton Presidential Center. I'm so glad to see all of you here today for our speaker series, A Little More Conversation, Elvis Presley. This is the first in a three-part series this summer in conjunction with our two exhibits at the Clinton Center commemorating Elvis Presley. We are inspired to feature these exhibits because of President Clinton's love of music and his fascination with the king of rock and roll. These exhibits are Elvis and Elvis at 21 photographs by Alfred Wertheimer. The Elvis exhibit is in partnership with Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee, complete with Elvis's red MG from the movie Blue Hawaii. And Elvis at 21 exhibit is in association with the Smithsonian, and it's comprised of 56 gorgeous pictures taken by Alfred Wertheimer. The pictures reflect a fleeting moment in Elvis's life, a young musician about to enter the world of stardom in 1956. From the Elvis memorabilia into the rock and roll camps we have for kids at the center, our tribute to Elvis has been an exciting addition to the Clinton Center this summer. I would like to thank our partners, the Department of Arkansas Parks and Tourism, and Richard Davies, and the Clinton School of Public Service, Dean Skip Rutherford, and Nikolai DePippa for their support in making this series a reality. I'd also like to personally thank those behind the scenes for today's program: Dina Warner, Karen Mulligan, Caroline Puttyfat, and especially Carrie Jackson Case. I think I owe you happy hour after this. To kick off this program, I'd like to introduce Arkansas Tourism Director with Arkansas Parks and Tourism, Joe David Rice. Joe has been an enthusiastic advocate for the treasures Arkansas has to offer, and especially of the Clinton Center, and we thank you for y'all's support, and we're happy to have him with us today. Please help me in welcoming Joe David Rice.
Joy, thanks. It's great to see such a good crowd, and these gentlemen here are used to standing room only crowd, so thank you all for being here. We want to thank Joy and her colleagues at the Clinton Foundation for partnering with us to get the important role of the Rock and Roll Highway 67 off to a good start. Thanks mostly, though, to the musicians here off to the right who have regaled us with some stories, some of which we'll be seeing on tape later. They told us some at lunch that we won't be able to repeat. Some involving Juarez, Mexico, I believe, but we won't go there, will we? If you don't know, the Arkansas Rock and Roll Highway 67 Museum opened in Newport recently. It's a great collection of vintage photographs and other memorabilia featuring clubs like the Silver Moon and Porky's Rooftop. And for those of you that haven't been to Newport lately, it's an hour and a half north of here, and the museum is downtown Newport, about 2 miles west of the current route of US 67. I'd like to ask Henry Boyce to stand up real quick. He's prosecuting attorney for the city of Newport. Don't get nervous. One of Henry's many good deeds was to be the driving force behind the Rock and Roll Highway Museum. So Henry, thank you again for that. The musicians here today have played the Silver Moon, Porky's, and many, many other clubs. We'll hear some of their stories, at least the ones for family values, in just a few minutes. As Joyce said, there's just a great collection of photographs behind us at the Clinton Center. Make sure you get over there if you have a chance. You can see Elvis Presley in a very youthful, unposed state that you'll really enjoy. I want to again thank Dina Warner for sort of shepherding this project through, and she's going to come up here and give us some background information about it. Dina?
When the Rock and Roll Highway 67 opened, we realized that we had a chance to record living history. Simply put, a new kind of music was discovered around Highway 67, a combination between country music and rock and roll, which now we call rockabilly. In the 1950s, clubs along the highway from Newport to Pocahontas hosted Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, Roy Orbison, Jerry Lee Lewis, Conway Twitty, Sonny Burgess, and many, many more. They combined the sound of rock and roll with country, which, like I said, became rockabilly. The gentlemen here agreed graciously to let us record some of their thoughts and memories in order to make this video podcast, and then we're very thankful that they decided to come today and share some of those stories with you. We had a lot of fun with this project, making these videos, and we hope that you'll enjoy watching them as much as we enjoyed making them. Thank you. Describe what it was like playing along the Rock and Roll Highway in Arkansas.
Well, when we started playing in 1954 at Bob King's at Swifton, it was our first paying job. We made the Kern Kennedy, Russ Smith, and John Ray Hubbard. We made $10 a piece on Friday night. Bob guaranteed us $10 a piece. They charged 50 cents again. It was the most wonderful thing you ever seen. It was fun back then. And when we got good, a little bit later on, we moved on down to the Silver Moon. But we had the Ed Horn, which was Jack Nance, and Joe Lewis. And the Moon had the big bands. Elvis played here 4 times in the 55 before he went with RCA Victor. Elvis created something that we'll never see again, at least in our lifetime, and I don't think ever. It's just something that Elvis just keeps going and going and going, where other folks go good for a little while and then they fall by the wayside.
So what was it like playing with Elvis?
We opened for him. The only time we actually played with him, we had a jam session at Bob King's in December '55. Johnny Cash was on the show. They played the Swifton High School that night. We were down at Bob King's opening up for them. And we started at 9 o'clock and we played till 10. Johnny Cash shows up with the Tennessee 2, Luther and Marshall. And then they did their hour. Then Elvis comes on. I was back there while Elvis was on, and Johnny Cash came by and told Bob Neal, who was their manager at that time, out of Memphis, and he said, Bob said, we're gonna go home so these people don't want to hear us. Which it was true, because Cash was his music, which later became real famous, but and he was good back then, and he sold a lot of records for Sam, but he wasn't Elvis. Nobody was Elvis. Elvis was really a nice guy. Yeah, he wasn't struck on himself. He was pretty though. Carl Perkins just had a saying about him. Carl said, "Oh man," said, "he's so pretty. I want to kiss him every time I see him." He can get away with that today.
Well, man, I know y'all played a bunch of places over here on 67 Highway.
We did, but we worked Arkansas quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a lot. Because they had all the clubs up and down in these
Right.
highways.
Playing places like Batesville,
Yeah.
Ball Knob,
Yeah.
and Truman, like you
We
said.
did all the same work.
Swifton,
All
Arkansas.
the same work.
Elvis even played Swifton.
He did them all.
Well, you know, all the big bands at one time or another played
Right.
Silver Moon.
Silver Moon
Everybody
was-
from Tommy Dorsey to Elvis to
Yeah, that was the
Bob
place to
Wills,
play.
I think Dunn Washam was
Yeah.
on the first one I worked
yeah,
on.
yeah.
You know, it's amazing to me how many people, when you're going up and down the Rock and Roll Highway, you'd run into other musicians that you'd recognize.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't
Oh,
see
yeah.
you, but you'd wave at them as they went by.
But I'll tell you what, we used to play, wasn't necessarily the clubs over here in Arkansas, was a lot of the schools. We played a lot of these, they'd put these Sun record shows together with Cash and Riley and y'all and the Pacers and so on, and we'd go play a high school.
That's what this was.
Yeah.
That picture there was.
But Arkansas was always good to us. We could always, when we wasn't off doing some other tour, we could always come to the CNR Club. Always.
Right.
I mean, if you needed a place to play on Saturday night, Arkansas, had a place for you to play. Man, you could always get a job over here.
I tell you, my only experience with Elvis Presley. I didn't know nothing about Elvis Presley, but I was playing at the Eagle's Nest. Sleepy-eyed John come through there and said, "Could this gentleman sit in with y'all?" And I said, "Yeah, they was just trying to get him going at that time." So I let him up there. He sang, just like anybody come up there, knock me out or pay any attention. About 2 months later, something like that, Elvis Presley was all you could hear. I went back at work and told myself, it's just a flash in the band.
You ain't gonna make it.
Boy, what a flash.
I bet DJ got some stories about Elvis, I'm sure.
They're all bad.
How long did you play with Elvis? I don't remember.
About 14 years.
Wow.
It was hard for me to keep a job.
Well, you started at the top, didn't you?
Might as well. But he was a nice man, easy to get along with. I never had a bit of trouble out of him.
Yeah.
And he was always polite.
Kern holds the distinction of being offered a job by Elvis, and he turned Elvis down. What was the reason you turned him down?
Well, what I want to play with you when I'm already making $45 a week.
And later on, I turned Conway Twitty down. What did he need? A saxophone player for? He was between rock and roll and country music.
Right.
And after a long trip with him up and down 67 Highway, I told him, I said, well, Conway, I just love all you guys. I said, I just don't think you're going to make it in country music. My mistake. At the Silver Moon, Jerry Lee was going to play this particular night, and so the Pacers, we took off, and we went in there to hear them warm up and set up and just kind of hang around, you know. And so Jerry Lee gets a hold of this pen. I see y'all still got that same dadgum old piano you had last time I was here. You know, I hope it plays better this time, you know. So he got to go, boy, he said, just what I thought. He took a finger, went boom, and broke that whole key off. Broke that whole key off. He said, that's one bad note I won't play tonight. And he went down, he broke that one off too. And he said, that's another one I won't hit. The rest of them seemed to be okay, I guess, because he didn't break any more. I couldn't believe it.
Man, he has tore up many of them. Mm.
I think anything John does or did, he deserved every bit of it. He's a great artist, great singer, nice man.
Yeah.
He had a unique sound that nobody has ever been able to capture. You hear overseas a lot of times, a lot of the rockabilly bands, but nobody has ever
Can't
really
get it.
been able to capture that sound that he had.
Man, you heard it.
Really
Keep it simple. They kept it simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
I was fortunate enough to play on about 20, 25 Cash records when he was at Sun. All of them wasn't out on singles. A lot of them came out on albums. But as far as musicianship goes, I mean, they were so unique. I don't know if you could compare them with great musicians, but I'll tell you what they were doing was definitely pleasing to the audiences, and they loved them. And on stage, they could come in behind anybody and do their stage show and get a tremendous response, you know.
Y'all tell me if I'm wrong. You know, I might be a year younger than you are, perhaps, Ace. But to my remembrance, back years ago, a lot of the clubs, I call them roadhouses, they were out on the edge of town. You didn't have so many in the town itself. Right. They'd be out on the edge of town or between the cities.
Right.
A lot of them had country bands.
Right.
They had country bands. Only bigger clubs like Silver Moon had enough dance floor and the size that people like Glenn Miller could come into.
Right.
But so a lot of these country bands that started hearing the new sounds of rock and roll, they began playing their version of rock and roll that was coming from other places, and they did their own thing to it. Well, later on, and nowadays, it may be known as rockabilly.
Right.
And because these musicians did not read, and it's a good thing they didn't, or they'd just ruined it.
I noticed this picture on the wall up here, the $1 Million Quartet. I believe W.S. Holland played on that session, didn't he?
He was. They were in the studio. Actually, Carl had a session that day to cut Matchbox, and Jerry Lee was going to play. This was before he hit it big. He was just going to play piano and get $15 for it to play on Matchbox.
Yeah.
And he did. He played, and he doesn't take a solo, but you can hear the piano rhythm back there.
Yeah.
Well, Elvis always would pop in and out. Elvis would come in just out of the blue, man. And so he happened to come in that day, and there's Jerry Lee and Elvis and Carl there. So Sam got on the phone and called Johnny and said, man, you need to come down here, and this would be a great publicity picture.
Yeah.
Sam called the newspaper guy to come down and make that picture, and how he got the $1 Million Quartet. The next morning in the paper, there's a picture the caption was $1 Million Quartet. So that, man, they parlayed that thing into a musical, you know?
The T-shirt has that picture on it.
Oh, hey, man, you never know when you're going to capture that moment of glory. And that thing sat on the shelf for 50, no, not 50 years, but 35 years anyway. Shelby Singleton finally dug it out and released it. It wasn't released when they cut it. I mean, that was just scraps, you know? And man, all of a sudden, you know, that scrap's become, you know, worth a bunch of money.
Let me ask you guys this, how do you like the music that we played and what you hear today?
Oh, ain't no comparison.
You know, I think that we've lived in the best of times, heard the best of music, met the best of people.
I think you're right. These guys with these tour buses today, now they don't have a clue how we travel.
That's right.
I mean, I was with Riley and Sonny, and then we all went over to Brunswick, Georgia, and drove all the way back. It was like 5 or 6 of us in a '57 Chevrolet. Started raining, and we had to put that upright bass, had it on top. We had to bring it inside the car, and we looked like one of these cartoon things, man. I mean, and Orbison was in that group, and when we got out of the car, it was like these clowns coming out at the circus. How many more was in there, you know?
Don't say you gotta want to do this.
You gotta love to do it.
You know, Jim was talking about upright bass that I played. We was coming back from, I think it was New Home. We got through and we sacked up and put the bass on the case and put it up on top of the car. And Jack and I was coming back home, Jack Nance. And we're sitting in there, hee and ha laughing, you know, and seen something pass us. I said, Jack, what was that? He said, well, I don't know. We stopped, and it's my bass fiddle that passed off the cart and passed us, you know.
When I first started playing, in fact, in this picture over here, I noticed some guys there, one singer in that picture, and during the night, maybe he sang 2 or 3 songs. You actually played a dance, you know.
Right,
You played the melody line of that dance. There was very little singing.
Well, there was a time when instrumentals were big.
Yeah.
I mean, I played on Bronzy, which was a big instrumental hit. And Ace had one of the biggest smash instrumental hits ever been recorded.
Absolutely.
And, you know, just all the time it was just instrumentals. The Tequila, that song Tequila.
Very seldom you ever hear instrumental now.
Yeah. And all this multi-track recording they had. Back then, we just had that one monaural tape. I mean, if you messed up, you just had to live with it or try to do it again.
Do it over and over and over again.
It wasn't this.
You got it perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't none of this. We're gonna, you know, punch it in.
And you know, you do it so long, and you think you're gonna get perfect, and then you'll start missing somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, you get that line perfect, and then start messing up another line.
And playing with Jerry Lee, we never did the same thing twice anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, if he played it once, the second time wasn't going to be like he did it the first time. But now with Riley, we spent a lot more time trying to make it just right and rehearse, and we'd get the songs worked up before we go in there. And most of the guys kind of knew what they were going to do, but we didn't spend a lot of time working up songs to record. You just book a time to go in, and you'd go in and do it.
I think that, you know, when we all were recording at our different times, I think having fun with your music was if you could do that and you were that comfortable with it and don't worry about your actual recording, have fun with the song.
Right.
I think that they turned out better that way.
Right. Man, our key thing was, can they dance to it? If they couldn't dance to it, you needed to slow it down or pick it up or something. You know, I mean, it had to be danceable because that's what all this was all about. I mean, people were dancing, you know, on TV, dancing in the street. They couldn't get enough of that Memphis beat.
Yeah. That's right.
I think it's great that they have finally, between our governor, Mike Beebe, and the people here in Newport that have come together to put this museum together, and recognizing what people like us in our industry have contributed to Highway 67, Rock and Roll Highway 67.
Right.
And there's a lot of places, but to have it recognized, I think is wonderful.
I
Really.
think you're absolutely right. And this festival over here is one of my favorites. They do a great job, and I hope they'll let us keep coming back.
Well, people in Jackson County, Newport have always supported music, you know.
Yeah.
It's always been a great success here this depot days. You know, I've always enjoyed playing.
Yeah.
Wasn't that fun? Folks, we are in a room with a bunch of legends, and I want to introduce them to you. In no particular order, Sonny Burgess. Y'all wave, guys. Pay attention there, Sonny. There you go. Bobby, you gonna talk now?
Let's see her here. We got King and all this. This is the family. Got one guy over here that grew up with us, graduated from high school together with along with other family people. Steve Stevens. Steve, he had a dance party before we played it. And he got us on. Anyway, he got us on there and he said, it's all right if I tell my real name. Anyway, he said, the boy name said, well, Don said, the real name was Rufus, but we didn't want to do high school. Anyway, he said, don't call me Rufus on the show, it's Steve Stevens. We got on, the first thing we did, he stuck that bank card playing with the 3 card.
Hello, Rufus.
But anyway, we recovered from that. That's about all I got to say. That's a great piece of work y'all doing today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank this lady over here. All right, Bobby Crawford. Kern Kennedy. Fred Douglas. Jim Aldridge. Ace Cannon. And J.M. Vanny. I get to start asking them questions, and then we're going to let you all ask them questions. And y'all be careful now, Sonny, about what you say, all right? Okay. You know, when we think today about tourism, it was kind of mentioned in the videos. You know, you get to see these buses and all that stuff. You know, touring wasn't quite as extravagant in those days. Who wants to talk a little bit about what touring was really like? Don't be shy. Somebody get started.
Well, that's probably because Ricky went on the video today last year. We were in France. We left France that morning, Saturday in Austria. We flew in and got there about 8:30. So that's the reason we wasn't at the round table with the other guys.
It'll come on its own. Are we on? Testing, 1, 2.
Check.
Here we go.
Well, I told Henry a few minutes ago, we're going to play Depot Days this year. I said, Henry, this year, I said, we'll be there in time. We're coming in from Australia. But last year we did impossible. Sunday night I did a show in Austria on Friday night. After the show, they took us to the hotel. We showered, dressed. They picked us up, took us to Switzerland to an airport. We got on a plane at 7 o'clock. We flew all day. We got to Newport at 7:30 that night and did the show at 8 o'clock. So that was real close. He was worried, but we were going to get there. What we did, and we do now as far as touring, it's gotten a lot harder for us, I guess, because back in the young days, we could take the driving, the one-nighters. Now, when we plan, we go to Europe, I tell them we got to have a day after we get there to rest. We got to have a day after the show to rest before we can come back home. So that's the difference now.
Where did you all live in those days? Where was home at the time?
We all lived in Newport, except Kern lived in Tuckerman.
Okay, right up the road.
So we all lived in Newport at the time.
And Steve did too. That's dangerous.
Yeah, after we...
Okay, let me try another one here. You all either knew or played with people who knew or played with Elvis. We've got this exhibit over here at the Clinton Library, all about those pictures. What did y'all think of Elvis? I mean, what kind of a guy was he? What was the word on the street? Elvis.
Testing.
Ace, you got it.
I was playing at a place called the Eagle's Nest in Memphis. Sleepy-Eyed John, which was a big DJ at that time, brought this boy by, just wanting to know if we'd let him get up and sing one or something. I didn't know who he was. He wasn't Elvis at the time. I mean, that wasn't what I don't know what they called him. We let him up there anyhow. And I went back to work the next day and was talking about telling that story, and I said, he's just a flash in the pan. When they asked me what I thought of him, and I didn't think of him no different than anybody else out there.
He's just one of the guys, or another musician. What about any of the rest of you?
Well, this one.
Testing.
There you go.
Now. Okay. Elvis, like I said in that clip, that he would pop in and out of the studio, and actually I was fortunate enough to go to his house before he bought Graceland. This was kind of what the exhibit is upstairs with the young Elvis, and that's the one that I choose to remember. You could get to him. Later on, you couldn't. I mean, he had so many gate guards. You could never get to Elvis after he had started his Las Vegas big show stuff. But he was great, man. He was one that the girls loved and the guys loved, and he was always kind of like he went out of his way to try to make you feel welcome when you were in his presence. We had he would have skating parties, and he would rent the fairgrounds and that kind of stuff. So I was fortunate enough to get in on that, and I have fond memories of those days. Now, what went on later on, I have not much to say about that.
Yes, you're on.
We did a session a couple of years ago, and we had background singers. What's the girls from Hardy?
You talking about Sandy?
Yeah, Sandy Rhodes. And she's done songs, did sessions with Elvis. And she told us a story that day I thought was one of the best things I ever heard. They were doing a session in Nashville on, I believe it was Suspicious Minds. And she said that one of the girls was off that day and they had to have a substitute singer. And said they're waiting there for Elvis to get there, and said this little girl said, this is nothing. Said, he's nothing. Said, it's just another session. She said about that minute, the door opened and said you could feel the whole room, the vibration that he walked in. Said this little girl turned about 10 colors and said, boy, it was so different. Said the minute he walked in a room, the whole room was just aglow.
Jack Nance, talking about that, Jack Nance told me that when he was...
Get him a mic here.
When Jack was with...
You're on now.
Dionne Warwick as his road manager. They were playing Las Vegas at the same time Elvis was there. So he said he wanted to go over and see Elvis because he remembered him from the Silver Moon days. He said he went over there and he said when Elvis came in that building that night, it was like electricity. Just come through the whole building. In other words, you knew when Elvis got there and you knew when he left. So he had the magic. Whatever it was, he had it.
We're talking about Highway 67 and the Rock and Roll Highway. How many places were actually on that you guys had an opportunity to play up and down that highway? And what do you remember most, I guess, about playing the places on 167?
Well, since me and Kern played most of them, I think we played everywhere in Arkansas that they had a nightclub, didn't we, Kern?
Every place except the Bloody Bucket.
They had a lot. One thing they had a lot of fun, a lot of music, and didn't get paid much, but things are still the same today. On what channel? Now we had Bob King's, we had Mike's Club right above Bob King's. The building's still there, but y'all didn't get to see it.
Okay.
But Mike had what we call the upper class crowd. In other words, the people with a little more money, they'd come up there, and us poor folks would come down to Bob's. Well, anyway, we played there Friday and Saturday night for about 3 or 4 years till we formed the Pacers. And then you went on down, you had the Silver Moon, you had Porky's Rooftop, you had Jarvis's Downtown, which came on in the 60s. Then you go on down, you got G.B. Kennedy's down at Possum Grape. G.B., if he got too loud in his place, he'd cut the electricity off. That's real character in these places. But down at the Wagon Wheel, which we didn't include on the Rock and Roll Highway 67, was the Wagon Wheel, which is now a church there. But it was a good spot. But everybody played the Silver Moon, Porky's, and well, the Oasis didn't last too long. You talk about tough. That's one of the tough ones. We played there one time. Played, what was it, Kern, in 52, 53, when Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys came to the Silver Moon. That's when he had Tommy Duncan, when he had the big band. Also, Louis Armstrong. I've got pictures of Louis Armstrong there.
Wow.
At the Silver Moon. But you had all those people, the Dorsey Brothers. Remember in 1956, the Dorsey Brothers came to Newport on the way through. That's why they stopped, and they played. And we got to open, the Pacers got to open for them. Redhead Woman had just come out. So we got to get up there when they took their break. We got to get up there and we played they gave us about 30 minutes. But the funny part about this was about 4 or 5 of those musicians come back on stage with us and started jamming. So those guys were really good musicians, because what we was playing was just wild.
But you were having a good time, weren't you?
Oh, we had a great time. Everything was fun back then. I wish it was today.
Well, you set me up for the next one for all of you. If you were going to give some, I guess, advice to young musicians today, you guys were making history and didn't realize it probably. And if you were giving advice to young musicians today, what would you tell them?
Let's everybody give them some advice.
Let's just go down the line here and everybody give a piece of advice.
Get a good day job.
Get a good job.
Nah, it's tough, but I think if you really stick with it, you can make it. It's like anything else. You got to practice. There's so much competition out there today. So many great artists, young ones, and but if you stick with it, you can do it.
Okay.
Kind of like Conway Twitty. Twitty was not the best singer or the best showman in the world, but he really worked at it, and he had that burning desire, which most of those stars do, to be a star. In other words, nothing else matters. I've got that goal right out there in front of me. I'm going to get there. So if they're going to be a star or want to be big, they got to decide it's work. They got to work at it. And like J.M. said, there's so many great musicians now. Up in northeast Arkansas, we've got them running out everywhere, tons of them, just looking for a place to play, kind of like we were back in the 50s.
Yeah, we live in the country today that you can be anything you want to if you just got the determination and grit to stay in there. If I was giving that advice to any young people, I'd say stay with it and set your goal high and work hard.
Ace, what about you?
Testing. That's about it. You got to be born to do it. I promise you. It's really hard. You put in some heck of hours, driving, playing, and riding to the next gig. Sometimes they wouldn't be like 40, 50 miles
it's like
apart.
being a bass fisherman. Be ready to live with a lot of disappointment.
Yeah. And the rest of it, I'm like that lady that was on TV yesterday. I'd rather take the 5th and afraid it might intimidate me or initiate me or something.
All right, let's keep going.
Well, you know, I think it's got to be a lot tougher now. It was tough for us. I guess there wasn't many on the musicians when we started like there is now. Even in Europe, we go to Europe, and they got some very, very good bands of young. They're real young, and they can play. And just like we went in December and played the $1 Million Quartet show on Broadway, and those kids are 30, 35 years old, and they can really, really play.
Yeah, that is a good night. If you ever get to Chicago, go see the $1 Million.
Yeah, you ought to see that show.
$1 Million Quartet.
$1 Million Quartet. Look it up on the internet.
All right.
It's in Chicago, New York, and London, and they're going to do a national tour. I don't know whether they're coming through here or not. They'll be in Memphis, I'm sure.
Probably will
Okay. We'll keep an eye out for it. The $1 Million Quartet. All right. Let's keep going here. Advice.
Testing one. I would tell them to find another job. No, it's tough, all the traveling and everything, but it's worth it. And like they say, you got to work at it to make it. Let me borrow your mic.
Okay. I did want to say that, you know, a lot of younger musicians, they don't know whether they're going to do that the rest of their life or not. I didn't know that I would be in music at this time in my life. My last day job was in 1958. I've played music the rest of the time. And I joined up with these guys. But what I want to say, I was inspired by a phenomenon that hit America and hit the world. And I became an Elvis fan. And because of Elvis, I'm still here today. And I want to, would y'all give him a big round of applause?
You know, one thing that we were told, we did a show, I believe it was in Europe a year or so ago, and the guy said, you know, he said, you guys play from the heart. And said, so many bands now don't, but said, you older guys play from your heart.
That's good advice, too. Okay, we're going to open it up. We got a question right here. How appreciative are the European audiences? How are they different
They're
than
probably
us?
some of the best audience for our kind of music. I mean, I just went to Sweden last October, and we played the 2 sold-out shows. People lined up, wanting autographs, pictures, just anything. It's awesome. I mean, you'd almost have to get there and see it to believe it, because here, you know, you have a hard time drawing a crowd, but over there, it's just unbelievable.
All right, who else wants to say anything about Europe?
We was in Spain a couple of years ago and got through with the show, and I was down in the area there. It was a big soccer coliseum. And this young man and his girlfriend come over to me, and they got down on their knees and bowed and said, man, y'all are something else.
Wow. Anybody else? All right, go ahead, Sonny.
Talking about the fans in Europe, and not only Europe, but Japan, Australia, and also South America. We just did Las Vegas, and we had Mexicans. Believe it or not, there's a lot of Mexican fans of rockabilly, or what they're calling rockabilly now. We called ourselves rock and rollers back then. But they fill up, well, they had 25,000 people out there at Las Vegas at that show. So can you imagine, that's 25,000 folks in one little spot. Well, I'll take it back, you had a car lot out there, had a car show, and the place we played in. But most of those shows in Europe and like Australia around there draw anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 people. And they charge like, they'll have it for 2 or 3 days, so they'll charge like £100 or €100. Stop and figure that. If it's £100, that's $150. Because our money's not worth much over there. But these people, they save all year long. I asked them one time, I said, how you folks afford to come over here? They said, we save all year long to come over here to see Elvis. That's how strong Elvis is. But thank goodness, folks, what you got to remember, if it hadn't been for Sam Phillips, we wouldn't be sitting up here and you wouldn't have heard the Sun records and nothing else except Elvis. Thank you, God, for Sam Phillips. He was a dandy.
Amen. Let me say one thing else about these European people. It's kind of flattering, but it's kind of scary in a way too. They know more about me than I know about myself. They can tell me where I was on a certain day, on a certain month, on a certain song. You played this lick, you did that, and when you stop to think about it, I mean, they didn't just. I mean, they've actually heard that over and over and over. So that's pretty flattering, but yet kind of scary.
I bet. Okay, let's get another question. Who's got one? You're not going to get this chance very often. Yes, back here.
Thank you all for coming. And did any of you have any professional musical training before you started playing, or have you taken the opportunity to have any since?
Any professional music training before you all got into this, and or have you had any since?
Any training?
Training, professional music training.
I played through the public school systems from the age of 9, and actually when rock and roll, and these guys, when Sonny and they had already started, I was still in high school. But I was playing big band music. I had big orchestras, and we played Glenn Miller and Count Basie and Duke Ellington and all that sort of thing. And so that was the professional training that I had. And when we first started getting 31 pieces arrangements, shake, rattle, and roll and stuff like that, well, I realized that my type of music was fading.
I don't think as far as training, no. What you got to remember, look at the Beatles. The Beatles have any music training? Did Elvis have any? Jerry Lee Lewis have any? The superstars, I doubt very much most of them had any kind of training. Maybe they hire vocal coaches after they get to be a star. But as far as training, Bobby, what'd you play on? You didn't go to school to play drums, did you?
No, my school didn't even have a band. Yeah.
Sonny, I'm glad to refer to myself as a claw-hammering washtub musician. That's about ear musician.
Well, let me turn it around a little bit. How did you all learn to play? Did you just learn yourself, or did you have an older brother or sister or mother or folks? All right.
I had there was a boy in my hometown that was in college. He gave me 3 drum lessons at 50 cents a lesson when I was about 13, 14 years old. Then I dropped it. And one day a band was forming, a little band, and they needed a drummer. And I had the money to go buy a set of drums, and that's how I got the job.
Fair enough. Hey?
I got my genes from my father. He played guitar and fiddle, and he told me to go to the band room, which I was too young to be in the band at the time. I started when I was 10, so I went to the band room, and they had only saxophone they had, but I done picked out the saxophone, but the only one they had was 3 times taller than I was. It was called a baritone sax. And I found out they made them in different sizes. And my dad said, whatever you pick out, I'll buy it for you. I took the thing out, and believe it or not, I played barrel polka in the back seat. I couldn't wait till we got home. I took it out in the back seat and started playing barrel polka enough to where you could tell what I was playing. It wasn't perfect by no means, but I remember going to my back to my 5th grade class and playing my horn for the teacher that used to teach me in the 5th grade, and that's where I met my childhood sweetheart and married her, wind up marrying her at 19 years old. So had a lot of training after I'd done made it. I went around singing hillbilly and playing with hillbilly bands and different ones and orchestras, and I wound up with the job of saxophone player with the Bill Black combo. After the Colonel fired him and made Elvis go into a big band type. Then I went with Bill Black, and then I put out Tough, and the rest is history. I'm sort of like Jim. I've had one day job in my life, and I just praise the Lord for letting me make it all playing music.
Tell them about the coat.
The coat?
The coat, when you were playing, that guy said, I'm going to take that coat off. Hell, I said,
Tell the story.
Tell that story.
Now, J.M., you told me that story about Ace, didn't you? When you playing with him, that guy come up the bandstand and said, I don't like that coat you're wearing. Ace looked at him, said, well, just take it off. He said, come on outside. They said Ace hopped off that band. Smooch's one told this, Smoochie Smith. They went outside, in about 10 minutes, Ace come back, and he didn't have that coat, and he said, he got it.
Oh, I got my training through the public school system. I actually played in the school band and played in the concert band at school, but I wanted to play, once Elvis came out, I wanted to play rock and roll. So, but the key thing for me was that no one would teach you how to play a set of drums. You either played a concert drum or in the orchestra or something like that, or marching band type drum. So I put them all together. I saved up enough money, bought me a bass drum and some equipment, but I made a snare drum, used a concert snare from the orchestra room, and then the marching band, I made a tom-tom out of that on the right side. So, and then I kind of was self-taught to play a set of drums because nobody could, wasn't anybody teaching you.
I hear you. What about pianos?
Well, my dad was one of those kind of guys that believed that idle hands was the devil's workshop. So most of the time he had me in that cotton field, but when he didn't, why, I'd walk uptown to the old Baptist church and plunk around up there, and I was determined to learn, so I stayed with it till I learned to play with chords, and that's the way I learned to play.
Thank goodness they had a piano at the Tuckerman Baptist Church. Is that right? Yes, sir. Here's another question.
Brown came in Maxine. I'm loving the time you all are talking about. Did any of you play with them?
Anybody play with the Browns?
We never played with them. We played the Trio Club, which they owned at the time. I live out close to where Maxine does, out in Maumelle now.
Anybody else play with the Browns? Yes, sir.
Shows with them, but not.
That's me.
Shows with them.
I did some shows with them on You Can Be a Star, TNN.
TNN, You Can Be a Star. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, in the pink shirt.
A couple. One, what was an early Sun session like with Sam? And the other one, tell the history of that picture of the $1 Million Quartet. Wasn't there someone cut out of that picture?
Okay, two questions. What was a recording session like at Sun in the old days? And what's the story of the famous picture of the $1 Million Quartet?
Okay, have you ever heard the $1 Million Quartet album? Okay, if you've played that album, you'll know what they're talking about. Carl Perkins had a session there that day, and he had W.S. Holland on the drums. He had his brother Clayton on the bass, and Jay Perkins was playing rhythm guitar. So Sam, or was it Sam or Jay? Sam and Jay both, okay. Anyway, they hired Jerry Lee to come in. Jerry Lee had just got to town. When I first met Jerry Lee, was actually with Billy Riley's Little Green Men over to CNR Club. J.M. and Martin Willis come running over and said, you got to hear this guy. So we went over there, and there he was on that piano. But anyway, he was doing session when he first got to town, so they hired him to do that session, whatever it was. Elvis comes along, and Johnny Cash comes along. And that's where they got that. Elvis came in with a girl, which you've never seen in that picture. But other pictures, right, Jim? She was there.
Yeah, there was a girl there. I don't know if
there was a girl there.
I don't think it was Ann Margaret, but it was one of these Hollywood starlets that he brought in there. Actually, the song that they were cutting was Carl Perkins' Matchbox. And Jerry Lee, you can hear the piano on Matchbox. He doesn't take a solo, but the rhythm part there. So they called Cash and told him to come down, and they got that done. But sessions at Sun were, very loose, very laid back. You wasn't on a clock. You didn't. It's not like cutting records today. I mean, you could come in and kind of practice or do whatever, run through the songs, and you had plenty of time. Nobody, not like today, everybody's looking at their watch. You're ready to get out of here. No, it was lots of time to experiment and nothing like today. That's one reason I never went to Nashville and got on a lot of sessions. I went up there for 2 or 3 sessions, and I mean, it wore me out. They kept looking at the clock and do this and do that. I thought, man, that's not the way I'm used to cutting records. So Son was pretty laid back.
Well, give Sam or Jack Clemens.
Get the mic
Jack
there.
Jack says he turned the machine on, but I actually think probably it was Sam. But Jack Clemens claims he did. Y'all heard of Cowboy Jack Clemens? He never was a cowboy, but he called himself a cowboy. His uncle actually worked for the independent paper there in Newport, Arkansas. That's where he wrote the air conditioning song. Y'all ever heard that song? Bobby Bear had it out. And I don't know who else. Back to you, J.M.
All right, another question from anybody. Right here in the plaid shirt. You're it.
This is somewhat of a personal question, so I'll let each one that wants to address it, if you don't find two. But historically, we know that the many musical artists had drug problems. Elvis and Johnny Cash, uppers and downers. So it's a well-known fact. And I'd like to know personally if you've experienced this yourselves, a drug problem.
Anybody had a drug problem or knew anybody who did?
We saw it even back, I know we were traveling with Bob Wills, his band, and one of the guys asked me, he said, man, how do you play without, we take this stuff, we pop each pill, and I said, well, hell, I like it. It feels good to me. I don't have to have anything to make me feel good. But there was a lot of them that did it.
You know, playing rock and roll is really exhilarating. I can't imagine anything else you would need except the playing. I know guys always talked about using uppers and downers, but for me, the playing itself was sufficient.
I never really had a drug problem. Uppers, we took those, but I guess alcohol was our drug of choice. You know, Jack Daniels, we drank a lot of that, man. About the only session or 1 or 2 sessions I can remember where there was any drinking was one with Sonny. We was cutting an instrumental, and so we went down to the liquor store and got us a 5th of Thunderbird wine, and I mean you can get it for about $1, and he's got an instrumental out called Thunderbird, and that's how he got his name.
We bought a gallon of it. You buy a gallon for 50 cents. Boy, that was good. Me and Johnny Riley. Oh, Charlie Rich was playing piano on that too. But that was a good session. It wound up being a good session. But it did have a, which is out. Have any of you ever seen the movie? What was the name of the movie, Crawford?
Don't make me lie. I can't remember. But we had the song, yeah.
It had the song and it's called Itchy. But Bobby's seen the movie. I have not seen the movie. It's one of those that goes straight to DVD or whatever you want to call it. Don't get on the big screen. Anyway, Bobby says it's Thunderbird actually that they're playing on the record. But blame that on Steve Stevens. He would.
What's the word, Thunderbird? What's the price? 30 twice. It'd gone up a dime by then.
Hey, listen, it sounds like he's been there.
I remember Jack Daniels, too.
He sounds like he's one of us, don't he?
Yeah, I used to take pills to drive, you know, different. Sometimes our drive after the job would be 300 or 400 miles sometimes. We'd have to take them to drive, but the only problem I ever had was alcohol. I cured that, but no kind of way. I've never been in a hospital for it or anything like that, but I cured that by just willpower.
I hear you. All right.
Yes. You know, I tell people nowadays, I said, you know, at our age, we used to drink and chase the women. I said, now we take Advil and we take our wives along with us.
Amen.
Hurts a lot less, doesn't it? All right, another question. Henry?
I hope you don't mind. Hello, check.
You're
check,
on
check.
now.
Hope you don't mind, Richard, but I just wanted to let everybody in the room know that you saw Depot Days was featured, and that's a free festival held every year in Newport on Front Street. Every one of these musicians will be playing there September 24th, Front Street in Newport. But I did have a question in addition to promote my own festival. Earlier, Kern, you said that you all played every club up and down the highway except the Bloody Bucket. Now, why did you not play the Bloody Bucket?
Well, I don't guess they ever had bands at the Bloody Bucket. I lived within, I guess, about 3.5 miles of the Bloody Bucket growing up, and you could hear the people hollering all the way down there, man. I'm not kidding you. That's really something.
We had still, you also had the Sunset Inn out there where no Randall's at. We never played that either, but those, you talk about tough places. You go in there, you didn't start a fight, you got in a fight if you went.
I remember one night we were playing up at Bob King's there, Sonny and I, and Johnny Ray. I believe Russ Smith was playing with us. And this guy from Egypt, Arkansas, come in named Booger Bear Cox. This guy looked like about a 350-pound white gorilla. And back those days, you could buy a beer by the quart. And he bought this 3 quarts of beer, and he set them down on his table, and he walked over to us, and he says, "Fellas, here's 50 cents. I want to hear Down Yonder." So, all right, we'll do that. We played it for him. As soon as we got through, he come back up there. He said, "I believe I want to hear more Down Yonder than I've already paid for it. So we said, "Well, I'll tell you what, we'll play it for you in a minute." So he picks up that quart of beer. He says, "I'm going to start drinking on this. And when it gets down to right here, if I don't hear Down Yonder, I'm going to clean this bandstand off." And let me tell you, we played it for a long while. Bob King finally come up. He said, "Is that the only song you guys know?" I said, "No, Bob, but I'll tell you right now, that song keeping us alive."
You're hearing history right here. Okay, anybody else got a question you're dying to ask? Yes, ma'am, one more. Oh, who's had a hand? Yeah, this lady here.
Did you guys ever play at a place that had chicken wire? And what kind of stories can you tell about that?
Place with chicken wire in front of you. Did you ever play there?
No, I think that was in the movies. You see a lot of that. I never remember that, and I played with Jerry Lee in a lot of crazy places. As a matter of fact, one little Newport story. I played with Jerry Lee at the old Porky's Rooftop. It was upstairs, and this is pretty funny now. He had these wooden steps that went up the side of that building. I don't know if any of y'all remember this or not, but the little old the room had a short. I'm kind of short, but I could touch the ceiling. That's how low the ceiling was in there. But what was funny about it, we got ready to leave, and I'm packing up, hauling all these drums down that step. Well, there was one of these planks missing. One of them steps is gone. And man, I stumbled, and I finally got under control and got down at the bottom. And here comes a couple of people. They've been up there drinking all night. Man, they blum, 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 blum. I said, "Man, look, we're going to stay here for about 20 minutes. I got to see this place unload, see how many of them make it down there." So that's a true story. They were coming down there, and it was crazy.
I saw a guy fall down them steps one night, and he just rolled down them steps, just got up and walked off.
I played a little old club, and this wasn't in Arkansas. It was in Tennessee, but I remember it was playing on the side of a grocery store in the daytime. And it was a grocery store. At night, they had a big concrete slab poured out on the side of the grocery store and chicken wire up around it. And the bandstand was the part of the slab, and the dance floor and everything was all in one. But that's the only time I'd ever played behind chicken wire.
For your own protection. Okay, guys, we are about out of time. I know you guys appreciate them as much as I do. Let's give them a hand. Stand up, guys.
Don't forget Depot Days, the last Saturday in September. All these guys will be there picking and grinning, and a lot of other folks too. So come on out. You'll get a good show for nothing. It's all free. Well, yeah, you can get backstage there with Henry's at. It's free back there.
Man puts on one heck of a festival.
You guys could have a show just telling war stories. We appreciate you. I will tell everybody here in the crowd, you can see those videos on arkansas.com. They're up there every day, all day, for free. Give them another hand, and thank you for coming.
I'll tell you one thing. They've done a fantastic job on that video. That's really good.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank the young lady that did it. Is it not complete? I kept looking for more. But it was really super. That's a top-notch job.
Well,